Hello and welcome to This Week in X presented by Crushing Comics. I'm your host, Crisis with a K, and I'm here with my colleagues from around the world, Fariha, Tyler, and Harry. And we are here to talk about one of the X-Men comic books out on the 27th of January, 2021, and that comic book is New Mutants number 15. Here is your warning. We are going to talk about every detail of this book, the run of this book, the rest of Jonathan Hickman's Dawn of X and Reign of X, and pretty much anything in the Marvel Universe is fair game. So you've been warned, this is a full spoilers discussion. To get started, we always love to just have a go round with our opinions from the gut and lightning round first. So New Mutants 15, Tyler, what is your off the cuff opinion here?
I really like this issue, even though there were some odd scene transitions. It is dense, but it is also a very satisfying read. It connects not only to other titles during this era, but it also connects to past era. So making the scope feel so much bigger. The art is a little bit rough in certain areas, but I still like it. So 4 noogies out of 5.
Oh dear Lord.
Oh man. Harry, what is your off the cuff?
I just like this book a lot. I am so pleased that with this new writer, this new kind of creative team and what have you, it just is really working for me. I think that, it is getting into just these nice, just fun character beats with a bunch of different characters. I do like how it ties in with other books. Now, I will agree with Tyler that the art is a little rougher this issue, but for me, it's kind of like pizza. Like if it's bad, it's still good. Like it's not even saying it's bad, to be clear. But I just this just made me really happy when reading it. And I think it's taking a lot of characters that I haven't really read a lot and taking them in interesting places. So, and I love a good party, and this has been a good era for having parties in comics. So this was a fun one too.
All right, Fariha.
So I absolutely liked this issue, not necessarily loved, but
absolutely
I really
liked.
That was an all-time swerve.
Liked it. I know. I mean, I was kind of going. I'm like, okay, I didn't love this. Come on, Fariha, didn't bring it down a notch. I did like it, and it very much reminded me of Academy X, which I read between last year. There was going on with different characters, and then you were going from scene to scene to scene to scene, and there was a lot of that over here. So it was very much reminded me of that. And poor little Gabby, no one wants to hang out with her. That broke my heart. However, there's one issue that I want to discuss at some point. So I'm gonna give it 4.5 grieving mothers out of 5.
Oh, I forgot. I'm so sorry. I give it a 4 Anolis out of 5.
Oh my
God. That's how you say
so,
it.
I think that this issue did a really impressive job juggling a really big cast in a way that a lot of the X-Men books have not recently. I mean, it's a lot. If we went through and named all of the people who get moments and little pieces of development here, it's huge. And I think it continues a lot of really great pieces of plot, which I'm sure that we'll get into from recent books. And it also fixed some of the discontinuity that I had in the prior issue, although as with Tyler, I did spot a few points. But if I have a pet peeve, for me, it is artists that do not finish drawing the faces of their characters. That makes a comic unacceptable to me. It's already in the trash can. I already hate it. It's like on the first page, we zoom in on characters and some of their faces aren't drawn. I'm like, what is going on here? Is there a missing Photoshop layer that I just don't have in my copy? So yeah. So look, I think there is so many character beats. We couldn't possibly go character by character. We couldn't possibly go beat by beat. Let's kind of start with the big and move towards the small here. So the big theme, which is not as foregrounded here as we maybe were led to suspect it would be, is Amal Farouk, the vessel of the Shadow King, although not necessarily the Shadow King, is really influencing the kids at the same time the New Mutants are training them. And it's leading to some conflict among the kids, and it's really got its hooked on this new kid that we got during Ed Brazon's reign on this title, Cosmar, who is kind of very distorted visually in her bodily form, and also can kind of create distorted nightmares in the world. What do we think about this Shadow King influence, not only on the kids, but on Amal Farouk, who through the data page here, we are reminded is a separate entity from the Shadow King energy itself? Tyler?
I think that this is the rehabilitation of Farouk. like it continues that theme. So I think Vita is basically separating the king, the shadow, with Farouk. I think together they become the king, but whatever. But I think she's trying to separate those two to start with, so that maybe at the end of this, they will just write something where the shadow is being purged from Farouk, and then we have this Farouk character which will be rehabilitated somewhat. That's my thought about that. But what struck me as really, kind of evident here is that Farouk is not secretive on the island.
No,
he's out in the open, basically. Like he was at a party, so everyone knows he's there, and that struck me as really, really odd, because I don't know if Krakoa would even accept him, given what he has done, to date. Like, was there anything placed, because if you think back, Omega Red came in and they actually put him in a cell. Yeah. But Farouk gets like to roam about anywhere he wants. That seems a little bit odd to me.
What's interesting is that, Tyler, I love that like we're kind of sticking with these different paths, where I read this issue thinking, oh, he's clearly up to something, where Farouk is like, I'm not sure they're doing rehabilitation. I just think the way that like the art draws him when it's kind of closer up on his face, he looks aggressively sinister or evil. Now that could be like a way to distract you or fool you, but I was under the impression that like it's going to be more traditionally villainous, and I like that. Like, I'm not sure, and it's interesting to see where it's going to go. But I bet the Krakoa thing is that, it doesn't really make sense why some of these mutants are here, just considering all the heinous stuff they've done. But like, I think maybe in the world, it's just like, hey, we passed a law that says they can come in. We got to live by it, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I think in either which case, it's interesting now that he's here. And that's kind of like what I've been hanging on to when I think like, oh, does this make any sense in the world?
Fariha?
So I thought that no one else can see him except for the kids. Like he only makes appearance in front of the kids. Like, he's kind of hiding in the shadows somehow because Shadow King. I don't know this character, man. No, I know, but it's like I thought that it was something only the kids can see. Like, he's like making himself known to certain characters. But I kept on thinking, like, these kids have it tough. There's one way he's pulling all their string. Then there's Exodus with his Magneto religion that's in the other side of things. Yeah. I don't know much about this character. I like don't have but the thing is, like, going back to it, Vita Ayala did a very good job of introducing element, like, even though me not knowing any of the past, I'm on board. I kind of know that this is a very sinister character and something is up. But also Farouk means, it's actually a lot of Bengali people have that name. It means someone who can distinguish between right and wrong.
Huh. So that's interesting. Now I know you can ask Claremont if you ever meet him.
I mean, I will. I'm like, okay, why do you choose this name? But yeah. So I mean, the thing is, though, the implication of what Cosmar ended up deciding to do is extremely sinister. And then the fact that it's coming from his manipulation, it's something to be said that the kids in this island are not being guided well. Like, and it's like the adults they're too busy with their stupid election and their stupid councils and everything. But a lot is going on underneath that is not good at all.
We have Cosmar's decision here, rejected by Danny, that she wants to go, or I don't recall offhand if she or they, will go with they just to be safe, if they want to go through the Crucible. And Danny is like, well, the crucible's only for if your mutant powers are messed up. You can't go through it just because you want a cosmetic change to your body. But that's not necessarily an evil thing that Farouk has put her up to. She got turned into a mutant, became this in the same way that Beak became Beak. But the mutant religion says, go through the crucible if you need to fix something about a mutant. It's not as interested with your physical form. Yeah. And so I just was like, finally, like I've been asking this question since the X-Men first came back in House of X5 in 2019. And finally we're getting to the heart of this. And it just made me like say like, wow, I don't know. So whether it's specific to Cosmar's situation or just in general about that attention to detail, what are the things that really jumped out about this to the three of you?
I mean, I'm not discounting that the Shadow King has influence here. He definitely have influence. I mean, as we've seen last issue, the kids became a little bit more violent as they approach him.
Sure.
So definitely something is happening. And also, Warpath used a sentence that that Shadow King used on Farouk, which is like, you are your brother's keeper. That two sentence was used by Warpath and in the data page. So there are influences that is happening here. I'm just not sure if this is the Shadow doing it or Farouk, Shadow pushing Farouk to do it, or Farouk himself doing it. So there is this question mark that is being presented to us through the data page, through the glimpses of the history of Farouk when he was a kid and doing good things last issue. So, I mean, that's where I'm getting at for this. As for the Cosma part, the Crucible part, I think it's really interesting because this question has been asked by Nightcrawler in X-Men number 7. Like, what is the protocol of someone who wants to be reborn better? Because he said in that issue that, some of the mutants have written wills that like, I want to come back as something better. Like he asks Scott, like, what if someone's idea of being better is coming back with Magneto's body and powers? Oh, and then
be cool.
So this is the connection that I kind of liked because it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense to be asked here. I mean, in some ways, I think it makes sense because this is a hideous character by human definition, as Danny puts it. Like, she wants to look like a normal kid, and her simplified thinking is that, well, if I die in the Crucible, I can be reborn into someone, into myself again, and not stuck here. So I think it's really it opens up a kind of grayish area, like what should you allow to do and not to do, to go through the process of Crucible to get yourself reborn.
Yeah, I mean, Hickman, even in interviews, he's mentioned like he has things in his books that are raising questions, but doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be answered or explored. So it's nice when you have books like this, where like Ayala, their writing is like getting into the ethics and the ambiguity of like, where does this land for each of the characters, which is, it's just satisfying to see it kind of move ahead a bit.
Yeah.
But to me though, it's like Cosmar is an underage person. Like, they are an underage mutant. So is that any different in real life if a child wants to do something, have a plastic surgery, and should they be allowed to go through with it? So it's kind of similar question. But the thing is, I think it all comes down to that these kids are not being mentored properly, or not being taught properly, or not given they're creating these clusters of like-minded echo chambers within themselves where they are just enhancing each other's childish thoughts in a way, and there is no direction. and it goes back to not having protocols, not having, any kind of direction for anything.
No education, basically.
Yeah, no education. Like, and we talked about it before. Where is the school? And now we have some kind of school, but it's only teaching you how to fight. You know, so which is something.
Camp.
It is like summer camp. I mean, I wish I went to a school which just taught me how to fight. But so it's just like my dream school. But the thing is, like, it's not teaching kids any practical understanding. And then there has been, like, Academy X that I talked about, there were a lot of talk about you are who you are, and you have to be proud of your look, your power, and all of that. But so this, where there is a disconnect, and it's kind of coming when there is an external influence that's just there, it's just going into a very dangerous territory.
Yeah. Wow. There's so many things to talk about there. And that's part of what made this issue so interesting and fascinating. So first, Cosmar is identified by the pronoun she here. And the reason I bring that up for a few reasons is that there are actually a number of new mutants introduced here, some of which originated in Ayala's mutant or Prisoner X series during Age of X-Men, who are explicitly non-binary and trans mutants. And I think that that's something really valuable to have here on the island, because it's hard to do these metaphorical stories about people who are having conflicts with their body, whether that's due to their gender identity or their some disability or anything, if you don't actually have that same representation in your cast. Cosmar is not, not representative of something that somebody could look like or experience in the real world. And Vita Ayala, as somebody who is non-binary, bringing that to the diversity of the cast of the book, I think is something really valuable, because it makes the mutant metaphor not just a metaphor. And I think that that's, when you're having it all with able-bodied cisgender characters all the time, sometimes the metaphorical stuff breaks down. To roll into my next point here, which is that the way the mutants are approaching the Crucible and everything here, even looking at our discussion of X Factor, it's almost non-intersectional. They're like, we really only want you to address your mutantum. Like, we don't want to discuss how your mutantum associates with your physical appearance or with some pre-existing disability that you have, or anything else about your identity that you may want to change or have a strong affinity to. We just want to treat you as a mutant. And, that's not for me to make a lot of commentary on about how it works in the real world. But I think that that's something really interesting about how different minority groups develop in the real world, where some of them are very identity focused about the identity of the minority, and some of them are more intersectional to say, we want to take it into account your identity as well as all these other things. And again, I think Vita Ayala is a really good person to be writing that. And that's part of why I love this. And I think, to roll through the next round of discussion after that, I think we can talk a little bit about how that's affecting Scout, and talk a little bit about Fariha's point about who's looking after these kids, because I really want to dig into that. But that was a lot of me talking. So I just want to see if anybody wants to go around on those points before we dig into the what about the children and the Scout stuff.
I mean, the thing is, as a Muslim person, there is a lot of that within the Muslim community, because in a way we are victim of America, in a lot of ways. It's harsh, but it is true. And there is also, within the community, there is no support. We don't have any support. We don't have a Vatican. Our version of Vatican hates other Muslim people. I mean, there's a lot of that too. But even within the community, there is no support for LGBTQ. It's a consideration that doesn't exist. There is no for transgender people. There is a lot of that things that are broken. As long as you're Muslim, you are accepted. Otherwise, who cares? Or no, you're not accepted. So I think here it just seems like, at least in the Mutant Dome, it's because they're so the fighting level with humans about their mutant identity is so all-time high, they don't even have time to think about all this other identity that they have all these time. So I wonder now, because of some of these things are being addressed or being taken away because they are now top of the food chain in a way, will come out, or no pun intended, or being talked about. So it's interesting. I hope that gets addressed, in coming issues, or at some point, in somehow.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great point. I do like that we're starting to see, these different facets and identities and what have you become more focused on, or, this would be the time to do it with this kind of established setting. Beyond that, this is more on the art and craft level. I do love the moment where Cosmar is told no by Danny in the book, because if you look at the page, like the panel just goes to all it's just a white background, and the lettering's really cool where it just starts to fade away quietly, and it makes me feel like those kind of moments when you're a kid and you want something, or you want an answer and you're very nervous and you get told no, and it's just like your head gets filled with white noise almost. And I thought that was just a very strong beat. I think that was done really well.
No, I agree. I mean, there are some parts of the art which was a little bit
stick figure.
No, it's very rough around the edges, and then there will be certain things where it was just the right amount of details, and you know who it is, because that's not important. Like, I just want to draw this guy there. Like, I just want to draw Professor X and Magneto in the party, but they have no speaking role, so I don't have to fill up all the details. I just give you a little bit of a hint that is Magneto and that is Professor X, and that's good enough. So I thought that part was done quite well, but and these choices of the background fading and the words, the dialogue fading, is also done really well here. And I think there's one panel of Farouk looking absolutely sinister. That was really well done too. But there will be, like Peter said, there are some scenes where the faces are kind of just non-existent. Like, I think there are a few Rahne mid to far shot. Let's not talk about far shot. Like mid shot, where you see her eyes, but no nose, no mouth, nothing.
Yeah,
which was kind of weird. So,
yeah. And I think
actually one place there's like only one eye. Like someone had only one eye, and I wasn't sure if that mutant actually has one eye.
That's absolutely my thing here. I think a great example of this is just before that panel where Cosmar fades out to white during her conversation with Danny. There's this great wide shot of the party that's broken into 3 panels, and you can see some other mutants in the background, and one of them is Domino, and her face is barely there, and you just see the highlight of her eye against her face. It's clear that it's Domino. I'm not saying that we needed every facial feature on Domino, and that's not my dispute. What I'm saying is that, especially for this huge crowd of young mutants who have a ton of names, who are all trying to get to know, who have different powers, some of whom look very similar to some existing mutants. There's this little one that has pixie wings. Is it Pixie? Is it some other mutant called Sprite? I'm like, always, it's called Sprite, but that was Kitty Pryde's nickname at one point. Like, it's a lot of information to take in. And I think when you have primary cast members who are like speaking, who are fighting, like, you got to let us know if they have one eye or not, to Fariha's point. And I think that's where I really get stuck, that in some of the confrontation, especially the page where Scout is kind of having her confrontation with all the kids on the team and none of them have faces, I was like, I don't even know who she's talking to here. So I don't want to come out as this prescriptionist who's like, every comic has to have faces drawn a certain way. And I really appreciate the Bill Sienkiewicz energy that Rice is bringing here, but I just think it's a little too loose at points for how big this cast is. I think if you had a cast of 6 characters and we knew who they were going to be in every single panel, you could get away with this more because we wouldn't need to see them every single time. But in some of these cases, it's like the one panel where we get to read this person's expression and there's no expression. And I think that's what I'm responding to here. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. Is it fair or not?
No, it's totally valid. Yeah. I mean, it takes away from the storytelling. I mean, I don't want to assume, but it feels a little more rushed than he usually has. Yeah. And I know that's a lot of characters, but like when you have people who look like, just eyes and a tiny mouth, they kind of look like Terrence and Phillip from South Park. It's like, this isn't like a full, like, this isn't exactly what we want, So, I mean, he's still great to me, but yeah, those are moments that don't land as much as they should.
But I think he took some liberty in the drawing in some cases because of the huge cast. He's like, these characters have no speaking roles, so let's not
too much attention
to them. And so but he did it in some cases. I think, like Peter said, he pulled back too much, so you get a head with like no features, and it really feels like it's really odd and unfinished.
So I think we have three big more topics to talk about, and they're all ones I really want to hear Fariha talk about. So I want to make sure we don't miss any of them. So one is talking about Scout and the for the children aspect. One is talking about Rahne's history, which has a huge chunk of recap of her X Factor plots, and one is just Doug's wedding reception now that he's married to Bay. All great topics that Fariha I know has strong feelings about.
All right,
I have very strong feelings.
But let's start with Scout. So Fariha,
you have the floor.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure we hit all three. So I want to start with Scout. So Fariha's now said a couple of times, when you don't give children guidance, that's how this arc began. So on one side, we have kind of Cosmar, who is quite specifically under the Shadow King's influence to some extent here. But on the other hand, we have Scout, who to this point, Scout's community has been Lara. Like she was in X-Men Red, she's friends with Deadpool, but like Lara really is her community. And you get this real sense here that like nobody's really thought about what Krakoa means to her. You got that sense in the last issue too, because they were like, well, clones don't, we're not going to bring them back because they're a clone. Evan. Yeah. And she's like, I'm a clone. And they're like, well, not really. And she's like, no, really. And then they kind of just left it there. And I just feel like by, Vita Ayala really cleverly uses X Factor to make that point here by having a whole X Factor scene of Dakin and Aurora, which could have been right from a Leah Williams X Factor book, but to use that to show that like Scout is basically going to Dakin to be like, you're the only person who even remotely gets me here. And Dakin's like, I can't do this right now. I'm trying to, we don't know. We'll save that for an X Factor. So I don't know. That's kind of what I bring to the floor about Scout. Like Scout is another flashpoint here of the problem with not giving kids a community that acknowledges who they are and what their needs are. And let's now go to Fariha.
So I love Laura and Scout. Like Honey Badger.
Honey Badger.
Is that Wolverine, Honey Badger, like the whole run, and then Mariko Tamaki's X-23 run, where suddenly she was the one, like Scout. So does she go by Scout now, or she goes by Honey Badger?
She goes by Scout.
Okay.
Scout.
Okay. So she was like she's actually started to become someone more than Laura, more than Laura's little clone, because she actually started having opinion, and she's like, what do you mean you're going to kill this person? It's just like us. So but then again, two of them were living in that apartment together, and they had,
Jonathan.
Where's Jonathan? Where's Jonathan? Yeah, Jonathan is also gone, and Laura is stuck in this thing, and now she is just all alone. My heart absolutely broke for her. Yeah. Like last month when I read the whole thing, I'm a Scout, I'm a clone. Yeah. I actually started crying. I'm like, she is a clone. And now and she's going from people to people, like going to Dakin, like the only other person she knows is like her in a way. And then Wolverine is in Madripoor in some auction or in the sea. We don't know where he is, So then now she's just like going from people to people, and no one wants to be no one understands her in a way, and no one wants to be her friend. It's just so sad. I'm pretty sure she's not the only one, but she's the one that we're seeing.
It's a very common thing, right? Because when you're growing up, you try to find your community,
right?
And
exactly.
If you're lucky, you find like-minded people, and then you form really good friendship with them, and they will last a long time. But if you're not that lucky, there will be times where you are pretty much alone, and here I think it illustrates really well that she misses a big sister, and she's alone. Like everyone is like, she's so eager to be part of the team,
friends,
friends, and it's really heartbreaking and sad that she didn't find that group. But but I hope that eventually she'll find someone that will a group that will accept her for who she is, or that she'll find herself fitting in, like Wolverine originally did with the all different X-Men, and Laura obviously did with the X family. So
I don't have a ton to add to that just beyond that this was like my favorite part of the issue. It's like so sad and you just feel it. It's such a primal feeling of being alone and not sure who you can connect with. And I want Frigg to stay very far away from her. Do not get her mixed up in your shenanigans.
Don't
Don't do it. Yeah.
No, she will take him.
Yeah,
like she will take it. She will be like, what? No, get out of here. But I do want to say though, like Scout, if you're listening, you can go join some Facebook groups, meet some friends there, and then maybe you will have your own This Week in X every week that you can get together on. And that way you can find your community.
Be like us.
Be like us. That's what we're saying.
And there is a Bake Off Krakoa.
Right, she wants to be on the Krakoan Bake Off. She wants to let's focus on this for just a minute.
It's the cutest thing ever.
But again, kind of showing that like they've thought about entertainment before, they've thought about community, just layers. I just think it's so smart to have picked Scout. There's a lot of young mutants you could have picked, and to be deliberate in picking somebody that we all as fans have affinity for, who's having a very specific disconnect in this community, I think just really drives home. They could have made up a lot more new young mutants. They could have used somebody from Academy X that we all have affinity for, but Scout is a really effective choice here, and I just applaud it. I think it's really smart scripting. We would have been happy enough just to have her in the cast, but to have her in the cast and use her this well and give her first real arc, it's just smart writing, and it appealed to me. Speaking of smart writing and something that like needs to be talked about is Rahne. Rahne, who I'm in the middle of reading, literally I'm issue 50, the middle of reading original New Mutants. She's the youngest, most innocent New Mutant, and she goes through such an arc. She has a baby with an Asgardian half god, and then her baby grows up to go to hell and then gets killed by Guido, her friend, and which is all recapped here. And it's just like, to play Rahne as always this happy-go-lucky wolf girl ignores that she's a real character now. And I just felt like, again, it was just nice to get the subtext made text here and to explore that through her connection with Danny, who's been there ever since the beginning. But Fariha, as somebody who knows the X Factor material pretty well, what did you think about this Rahne material of kind of like bringing us back to the full dynamic adult version of Rahne?
So I've been actually thinking about how to discuss this, like this week about this topic. It's very near to me. So I'm coming up with a term, and then maybe over the years, I'll polish it. But I call it the economy of women's suffering in storytelling. So the thing is, I am so tired of female superhero losing a child and then mourning for that child. I am so sick and tired of the fact that Empath multiple times got regenerated and her son isn't. And then the fact that knowing the relationship between her and Elixir, it sounds a lot like revenge than anything. The letter reads really weird because knowing their relationship in
what would you do? Because you just read those books too.
I really read those books too. I'm telling you, I'm now so dangerous. You don't want to mess with me, X fans. But the thing is, which in and itself was very weird because she was 18 or she was 19, he was 16. Let's not get there. But I remember from X Factor how it was it was so terrible that first there was the baby with, what's her name? Siren. Siren's baby, everything with Siren. And then there was her story, and they were both about a female superhero losing a child. And then we have, on the other hand, I know you all love Cable and then the family dynamic, but Jean Grey being settled with raising kids that are not hers. And then I was like, what is going on? And I call it it's like economy of women suffering, because I don't know whether it gives some kind of this is the only way that people think, and this is not Vita Ayala's fault, by the way, because she's just they are just pulling old stories in the here, and I think it works. But the fact that these histories were there, it's a lot. It's just so much, and then the fact that, and then she just wants her baby, and they're not they're not, but the thing is, it's also very real life. It's also very real life. To me, from that point of view, it actually hurts that, yes, if this was a real life, this is I mean, we're seeing it now, vaccination. We're seeing it now, what's happening, people jumping lines to get vaccinated and all of that. So this is very much like that. And I was sad. I was really sad about it. I was sad twice in this issue.
I mean, I think the fact that Tia is not in the queue means something, because there's no proof of death. Remember that? Remember that X Factor has to establish a proof of death. Well, except for choir, but that's something else. But I think this is meant to be the beginning of another plot, another arc, and Vita is basically establishing that, hey, this is a problem, and then and that's where this arc, this Reigns arc is going to move along. I hope that's the case.
No, and I absolutely agree. I hope that is the case, because the thing is, it didn't look like they're even considering the case. Like, it was pretty much dismissed. Like, it just like the way the letter was done and the way that she got it. And it's just like, and at one point you have to wonder, is like, is Alexer doing this because he still hasn't gotten rid of his old feelings, or what's going on? So the thing is, like, it's like all of it. It's just like, just women suffering. It's like, just, it's that, just like, and it's suffering because of a child, a child that she didn't necessarily had, like, didn't even get to see grow up, or there was like so much that was going on with that. I was like, and it reminded me all of that, and I was like, and I actually went to Wiki to confirmed
to read what happened.
I remember I had to refresh, but I was like, oh, sorry, Harry.
And the thing I want to kind of wind this up with here is, I think I really appreciate this discussion about the economy of women's suffering. I think it's something we should continue and pay attention to in these books, especially because this writer room is a much more diverse writer room than any point in the previous X-Men history. And there's a lot of economy of women's suffering in the history of X-Men. And I think so often women are given children in comics by male authors, and they're either given a child because that's character development. Oh, they had a kid, that's character development. Or their child is taken from them or killed or is away from them, and that's character development too. But the character development is the moment of attachment or the moment of loss of attachment, and then we never get to follow them as a person after that. And that's what really struck me, and I'm so happy you crystallized it the way that you did, Fariha, because this scene felt like one of the few times in the history of comics that I've ever read a scene about a woman getting to reconcile her own grief and her own identity after that attachment, and to then have it with her best friend, another woman who's there to support her, and she says, I'm always with you. It just really, really hit for me. And this is why it's important to have people with different perspectives on parenthood writing a comic book. And it just, I just think it was hugely important. And I hope that it lets us talk about some of these characters and what people have put them through in different ways. So yeah, I have some strong opinions about that. Anything else on this rain plot? Did Harry not get a chance?
I was too. You said you said most of it. I just feel that I do think the women character hero becoming pregnant, having a kid, and then losing the kid or what have you. I think that's just aggressively lazy writing, where you want to kind of give a character the feeling of loss or detachment, but not wanting to commit to it and revert back to the status quo, which kind of like colors the entire situation. And it's been done 100 times. So I like the idea that we can actually if this character can be brought back, it can kind of have a different approach and a different kind of look at this thing without being the same like heartbreak over a lost child. Or I feel like this is kind of a cousin to fridging in a way, but
yes.
Cousin to fridging.
I think that's the resurrections could kind of not rectify, but kind of push this into a better, less contrived, generic place.
Now on to the final scene in this book. We knew this was going to be the one we were going to talk about the most. We knew. Doug's wedding reception, which has so many layers. I think we just have to go around and like name the one thing that stuck out for us because I can't even summarize it. There's so many. We've already hit the Cosmar beat.
So small,
but
little bit
something else. What would you pull out from the wedding reception? Fariha, of course, we're going to start with you. Doug's wedding reception. What would you like to pull out?
Somewhat, I try to remember. Okay, so for example, first of all, Sunspot, what is he doing here? So he just came for the wedding because he's still in space. So he just came for the reception.
They have a
That's the thing. Krakoan gates makes this. It makes a lot more sense now.
It takes about an hour.
That's okay. That makes the perfect sense. Yeah. So and then he's like, I'm so proud of you, little Doug Ramsey. Today you're coming of age. Tonight you become a man. So I'm like, see, I wasn't the only one who thought Doug was ready. His friends also thought that. I was like, this is amazing.
I love all these books are positioning Doug as like this sweet, innocent child, just like this very delicate boy, like sensibility kind of thing. It's just funny.
Tyler, what stuck out to you the most in the whole wedding reception?
Warlock is looking a little bit angry. I wonder.
That's awesome.
That is true.
It is true.
I mean, there's always going to be that little bit of jealousy when you watch one of your friends get.
And you've almost got to zoom in. Like I'm looking at the off screen here at my second screen. Even the first scene is him, I think, with Brew at a table, and Warlock looks pissed. It's so small that you have to like enhance.
Exactly.
I would pay money for that to read that conversation. Mine, I don't know why. Maybe my feelings on X-Force are starting to seep into other books, but I saw like Xavier talking to Beast. And I was like, Beast is here. And I was like, don't, whatever. I was like, I don't know why. It's like, Beast is here.
Peepers is there.
Peepers.
Also, Havoc is trying to get out of Aliens again by telling Cyclops, please get me out of there.
Bad things are happening.
I mean,
it's like you got to request a transfer. It'll take 2 to 4 weeks.
And then Baze was actually carrying Doug. That was the sweetest thing ever. So she was actually carrying him. I'm like, isn't that nice?
So I have 3 things, but 2 of them are super quick. One is Dazzler and Lila Cheney. Yes. Okay, that was one. So 2 is I love the Noogies moment because it's very Ileana being the big sister instead of being the little sister, and she is very protective of Doug, as all of the original New Mutants are in the original run. And it just, because I'm reading that run right now, it like super resonated that she would treat him like this little brother, and then but then she's also a captain, which like makes her kind of parallel to Bay. And then she has this moment with Bay, like, right, of course he's your husband now, which I just think was, again, brilliant. And then the final thing is what Fariha noticed, Doug is positioned in the traditionally feminine pose for the person getting married multiple times. He's being carried in by Bay. At the end, when they have their kiss, he's the one who's tossing his leg up in the air, which is something that, a lot of times and Bay is towering over him, again, kind of reversing the traditional gender labels of that kind of an image. And I just think super clever, whether Ayala totally scripted it, in their script, whether Rice decided on, whether it was a collaboration, it's just these little touches that makes him feel like a full character. And he's not even the focus of this issue, but I feel like I got some good Doug content here.
And also Scout is still looking for Dakin. So what is why? Like did that ever get resolved?
No, but I mean Dakin told her, say, let's play claws out at the party later.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because I was like, that never get resolved.
Yeah. And then Dakin
just wants her friend.
Decided to dance with Aurora all night.
Well, I mean, it's Dakin. He's gonna, dudes.
Dakin's gonna Dakin. All right, folks. Last go round. Is there any small detail, quick like a strike of lightning, that we haven't talked about?
I've just
Tyler.
2 little things. One is Sharknado. Because one of the synergy between Rainbow and Sharknado is totally Sharknado.
It is Sharknado.
The synergies work so much better this issue.
Yes, I agree. And then the other thing is that Magic went to confront the bullies. Like,
what happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Anybody?
I got nothing on that.
All right.
I love that the in the party scene, you know, you had the first wide shot of the whole crew, but then like each individual panel, there are like different characters from all the various books. They really aren't repeated that much. I've noticed like Wolverine, Beast, Aurora, I think North Star, Choir, like he did put a lot of work into having different characters just in the background. And, you know, that's a little bit of the extra mile.
All right, folks, that is our discussion of New Mutants 15. A lot there and just so much dense thematic and character work. And I'm now incredibly, incredibly positive looking forward to the next issue of New Mutants. If you want to hear us talk about the other comic books out this week from the X-Men line, you got to look for other videos on the channel because we get together to do this. Why, Fariha?
X-Men is better when it's read together.
That's right. And we definitely had a good time reading this one together. So from us to you, on behalf of myself, Fariha, Harry, and Tyler, thank you so much for watching This Week in X, and we hope that you are well.